For those of you who know me, you know that Scream 6 was my most anticipated release of 2023 for obvious reasons, and it exceeded my expectations. I get it. When people say it's too soon to crown the best film of 2023, there are 9 more months left in the year and films to come out. I understand where they're coming from, but in this case, knowing me as I do, none of them, I am sure, none of them are going to convince me that this isn't going to be my favorite film come December 2023. Like, let's be honest here. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to For the Agenda. If you're new here, welcome. My name is Juan, and on this channel, I essentially review and watch mainstream content and let you know if it's worth your time, because your time is valuable, and no one should tell you otherwise. Today, you saw the title for this video. You know what I'm going to be talking about. I've been waiting to talk about this film since it was announced. We are going to be talking about the newest film, Scream 6. Finally. Which is wild to think about, that like 15 months ago, we got Scream 5, and it was after 11 years, and now 15 months later, just like what happened between the first and the second one, we're here with Scream 6. I think this is amazing. As a fan, I was really excited to get invited to see this film. Thank you so much for the opportunity to see this ahead of time. Literally made my day. It made my day. It's gonna make my week. This is Scream weekend for me. So let's just dive into this review, because in this installment, the survivors of the Ghostface killings from Woodsboro in our last film, they're leaving Woodsboro behind and they're starting a fresh chapter in
New York City.
Well, we all know that they can't leave what happened in Woodsboro behind, because where they go, Ghostface will follow. I'm gonna be honest with you. I had high expectations. I was hopeful they would be met. Not only did I have high expectations, I really loved the idea of Ghostface in New York. So this had a lot riding on it for me. It exceeded my expectations. I feel this meta requel sequel raises the stakes in ways I wasn't prepared for. You've never truly seen Ghostface like this. And I also really like that the core four, they shine throughout the film. We're going to talk about them in a little bit. Scream 6 felt like an adrenaline rush. It's the roller coaster you want to enjoy again and again and again as a fan. What Radio Silence has managed to do here is showcase how Scream would look in the real world, outside of what's expected to happen in Woodsboro. You're set in a real world situation, and they took the concept of Scream and said, all right, we know what it looks like in Woodsboro. Now, if this were to happen in the real world today, right now, how would it look like? That is essentially Scream 6, and I loved it. Because of that, we get some really new and cool scenarios that feel more realistic. They feel scarier. You could see some of these things happening, and it's scary to think about, but that is one of the great things about Scream, is that it preys on you psychologically, and you start to analyze, like, could this happen in real life? If someone snaps, would that be how they approach things? And in terms of a horror film going that route, I feel they nailed it. But aside from the horror and the gruesome murders, this is, again, you've never seen Ghostface like this, because he is brutal in this film. I could not believe that they went there with this film. Like, God damn, they went there with the kills. I wasn't expecting it. I have a minor note for Radio Silence on a couple of them, but we'll get to that. But they went for it in this film. And you know what? It's a sequel. You got to raise the stakes. You got to raise the body count. You got to raise the gore and the blood. So I get why they did it, but fans will be glad to know that they did go there. They didn't shy away from saying, no, 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 we're just going to keep it at a normal amount. No, they went there, and they definitely had me on the edge of my seat. And aside from that, you also get a human story here. This is more than just a story about killings. No, this is also a story about sisterly bond. You have a story here about trauma.
PTSD, trauma.
You have a story here about how one deals with trauma, how one copes and moves forward, especially when you are at a younger age and you are trying to figure yourself out in where you stand in this world. You want to just forget everything. So maybe you don't make the best decisions all the time, but you just want to find a way to numb the pain, if you will. This film really went into it, and I really appreciated that. With a concept like Ghostface in New York, the options are absolutely endless as to what could have been done. You could have had a chase scene in Times Square. You could have had something happen near Broadway. You could have had a lot of options. And those are options that people would normally expect. But this film wasn't filmed in New York. This was filmed in Canada. And it looks so much like New York. I was really impressed. I actually really loved what they created here in terms of the world building. It did look like New York. So I was very happy with what they did. But if you're expecting Ghostface to just chase him around for 2 hours, just spotlighting the highlights of New York, this isn't that film. You can't just have a movie that's 2 hours where they're just literally running around New York and then suddenly they're like, oh, look, Central Park. Like, no, that's not a Scream movie. That is a different kind of movie. And they're not just there to hide from a killer nonstop. That's ridiculous. With Scream, it's typically not your run-of-the-mill horror film. It requires a setup of a cat and mouse game, and that is just how Ghostface operates. So you have that concept here in the New York setting, and how they balanced it, for me, worked. To me, it hits the highlights of where you could imagine that happening in the city, but it still left enough room to tell a very convincing story. They found a balance with this film in terms of the storytelling, which I really liked, and I think their script did a really good job with that. Now, I said I had a little bit of a critique with Radio Silence. I have a couple minor issues, which I am going to mention real quick. One thing I'm going to have to take some points out for Radio Silence, and this is kind of a bit of a warning for those who are squeamish and don't like this particular trend in horror films, like me. Either way, I'm not going to take that many points off because, again, I'm a fan at the end of the day. But I do have to critique this a little bit. So, never in a Scream film has a character been stabbed in the eye and they show it up close. This only happened in Scream Season 3, which is on VH1. It wasn't necessary there. And quite frankly, I don't think it's necessary here for that to happen. Again, it's a minor complaint on my part. But again, I hate seeing that in films. And if you don't like that kind of scene, fair warning, it does happen. I can't say where, but it does happen. I just find that concept of, killer stabbing someone in the eye, I don't think it's necessary in a horror film. I find it unoriginal, and it's just sometimes feels like a cheap cop out. It's like, no, that is not what Ghostface normally does. I get it. He's not like any other version we've seen before, but you don't have to go for the eye. It's just like, nah, nah. It was like almost perfect for me. It was almost perfect. But then they went there, and I'm just like, damn, it was a little upsetting. It's a little upsetting. It's one of my notes. But you know what I really did like here? This cast. This cast, everyone did a really great job. They stepped up to the plate and they delivered their roles really well. But I have my favorites. Obviously, I got to kick it off with the returning Kirby Reed. I think Hayden Panettiere was fantastic. I loved seeing Kirby back in action. And her role here is quite important. She's still as sassy as before, and she has some great comedic moments. She's still the same Kirby you fell in love with in the fourth film. She's just older and she's wiser. And the minute she showed up on screen, I basically cheered for her like she was a returning Avenger in a Marvel movie. Like, she is a fan favorite for a reason, and this film captures that to a T. I was really happy with how they brought Kirby back into this film. To see her come back and interact with these new characters just adds this to the experience, and it makes it a much better time as a fan watching this film. I also really, really liked Mason Gooding. I loved his character the last time. I think Chad is perhaps one of my favorite of the new characters, but this time around, he is the heart of this film. He is the heart and soul of this film. He has this emotional arc that I just really enjoyed this arc, really allows his character to get the chance to be more than a jock. You see him step up as a leading man, and you see more of Chad's vulnerable side than you did in the last film. And before you could argue that he was playing a bit of the stereotype in that film, but here he gets a more realized version of his character. And it's so much better because you already start to see the journey that his character goes on. And I really appreciate that, what they did in this film. You root for him either way because, we stand that himbo. But Chad doesn't let his scars define him. He kind of helps others get over his scars, but he's also ready to defend his friends at any moment. And I honestly love that character arc for him throughout the film. I really enjoyed his character. He's so good, and I think fans of Mason Gooding are not going to be disappointed with what he delivers. He brings it. And just like Mason Gooding brings it, you got to give a shout out to Jasmine Savoy Brown as Mindy. She is also excellent. And this time, she has a monologue, and it was extremely well delivered. I'm talking iconic character moment for Mindy. And what I also loved about Mindy's character is how she handles the events of Woodsboro. Without going into it as much, I think that you see everyone's different approach here. And I think Mindy's approach to it was something I both expected and didn't expect because, again, she's related to Randy. So I kind of think, okay, well, one of the twins might just move on like Randy did. And again, Jasmine Savoy Brown, she elevates her role. I think Mindy is stronger here than she was in the last film. I loved her in the last film, but here she is even better. Every moment you spend with Mindy, every interaction you see her have with the characters is just really, really great. And you fall in love with her character even more. That sibling pairing couldn't have been more perfect because they are just fantastic. Now, I also got to give a shout out to my favorite new character, which was Devin Nicola as Annika. She was my favorite new character. She was a delight to see on screen. I loved seeing her interact with the core four. She was a perfect fit for this franchise. I really liked what Devin Nicola brought to this character. This character, to me, I think is going to become a fan favorite. Now, we also got to talk about Miss Courtney Cox, Gale Weathers. Gale Weathers is back. She's absolutely phenomenal. And it's the same Gale as before. You know her, you love her, you know her antics. But this time around, her character's never had a phone call with Ghostface. And when it was shown in the trailer, baby, when I saw that she was getting her moment, I was ready. She probably has one of my favorite conversations with Ghostface in that entire franchise. For me, it's up there with Kirby's. And Kirby's in Scream 4, that's one of my favorite conversations with Ghostface of all time. Gale Weathers brings it, and she just, I loved it. I loved it. I loved Courtney Cox in this role. She was so good. Next up, we have Jenna Ortega as Tara Carpenter. She was great. Jenna is always great, let's be honest. She has some really funny moments and has a very iconic scene with Gale Weathers. It's going to become a fan favorite. I'm just saying. You're going to know it when you see it. And I like how in her character and Sam's character, again, we see how they handle not only grief but trauma and how people are coping with that and moving on from the situation of what happened in Woodsboro. You've seen it play out in the other films, but here you get more of an in-depth look of what they are going through, how they are approaching this. And I feel that the cast handled that so well, but especially Jenna Ortega. I think she does a fantastic job. And again, the way they analyzed the Sisterly bond here was really great between them. And with that, of course, we gotta bring up Melissa Barrera, Sam Carpenter, who I consider to be a co-lead with Tara. And I really liked how Sam came into her own in this film. I felt she delivered an excellent performance here. They always say you're as good as your last role. And when you compare her character in Scream 5 and her character here, it is way better. And what you see Sam go through here, I think gets you more invested in her as a fan. You get more invested in her character. You want to find out what is going to happen to her. And I really appreciated that here. Her character definitely leveled up for sure. No, we actually got to see how the situation affects Sam in many ways, not just psychologically, but also in the public eye. And that's all I'll say because I really like that plot point and I don't want to spoil it for you. I'm doing my best not to spoil anything for you. It's hard because I want to talk about so many things that happen in the film, and there are so many layers that you just want to peel back and dissect. But that's all I'll say for now because, again, this film shouldn't be spoiled for you. If you didn't like Sam Carpenter in the last film, which, can't relate, but if you didn't like her character in the last film, I definitely think you're going to like her in this film. Another note I want to touch on is the camera work. It was once again fantastic and very much contributed to the adrenaline rush of Scream 6. I still feel that Radio Silence was the perfect choice to bring back Scream to the mainstream, and camera work is just a perfect example of why they were chosen for the job, along with the script and the camera work. It's perfect. Now, one of the things with the Scream film is obviously the three-act structure and what leads up to the ultimate killer reveal. A killer reveal in Scream is always meant to be very much iconic and has a very good motive as to why the killer, in this case Ghostface, is doing what Ghostface is doing. This time around, I'm not gonna lie, because expectations were so high, because there were so many theories out there that as a Scream fan, you just can't help but to be invested and question every potential thing that could happen. I'm not gonna lie. I feel because of that hype, because, again, we live in an age of social media where all the information is thrown at us and you just absorb everything. Because of that, I feel I was a little underwhelmed. Don't get me wrong, it is solid and it makes sense. Perhaps, though, it isn't my favorite reveal, but it kind of did prove a theory I was thinking about. So, at least to prove that I was correct about one thing, I felt the motive for the killings, again, it works. But this is also one of my critiques. It's maybe not as strong as I would have wanted it to be in terms of its delivery, but the ride and the setup of how you get there was so much fun that I overlooked it as a technicality. I was like, all right, this works. I'll go along with it. But when I sat back and I analyzed it, I'm saying, okay, it did work, but maybe I wanted a little more from it. And that's one thing where I would say as a fan, maybe lower the expectation just a little bit because there were so many theories out there that it is impossible not to be blinded by the hype. So I would say just lower the expectation a little bit, but the killer reveal can still be fun if you don't pay attention to social media. I think the perfect way to look at it is don't think, just watch. Because I think the minute you start thinking about alternatives or what could be the process of elimination you go into when seeing this, then the reveal is not as strong. And that is something that you can definitely take with other horror films. But even with that said, I think the third act was great. I thought it was suspenseful. And again, even though I didn't 100% love the reveal, I still enjoyed the showdown. I actually think there are a lot of people who may enjoy the reveal and the motives. For me, though, maybe it's because I'm a hardcore fan, I didn't 100% live for it. But you know what I did live for? I lived for the bodega scene. I thought the bodega scene was excellent in terms of building tension. I loved the ladder scene that is alluded to in the trailer. You see a clip of it. It is phenomenal. That is one of the things where the camera work just was chef's kiss. It was perfect. And I really loved the subway scene. In terms of tension, I would say the subway scene and the ladder did it the best. Subway scene is original. Subway scene felt new, felt fresh. Same with the ladder. I haven't seen that in any other horror film, but they felt so unique, yet so perfect for a Scream film, which is why I say when you think of the ride, when you think of the setup of how we get to the reveal, it was so much fun that you're just like, you know what? I had a great time overall. So, you know what? Maybe it was me. Maybe on a rewatch, I'll actually enjoy the reveal a little bit more. Maybe I got caught up so much in the film that I just couldn't enjoy it as much. I mean, I'm obviously going to rewatch this a couple more times. So we'll see. I also have to report my screening was in 3D, surprisingly. And the 3D is unfortunately, at least for me, it wasn't good. I'd say for about an hour, maybe almost an hour and a half. And this film was 2 hours. I was able to take off my glasses real quick and I could see the film just fine. Sure, there was a little bit of blurring on the sidelines, but I could still technically see it without the glasses at some point. And I unfortunately have to say that I wouldn't tell you to see it in 3D. I would have to say that my biggest critique with this film is if you're gonna do 3D, because we haven't had a horror film take advantage of 3D in quite a bit of time. If you're gonna go for it, you need to go for it. I feel the idea of this going for 4DX where the chairs just move around like it's an amusement park, I think that is smart. In terms of just the standard 3D, like Dolby 3D, I guess, I didn't love it. I felt it just didn't work. I didn't think they took advantage of the 3D. They had some shots where it's like, okay, that's very much 3D. But for a moment, I was getting a little bit of flashbacks of the 3D that used to come out in 2010. And what they learned in 2010 is probably what's going to be learned with this film, which is we tried, but maybe James Cameron has the best grasp on how to do 3D. But it is necessary to talk about Demi Lovato's Stay Alive. I feel that is one of the best songs used for a Scream film. I loved Something to Die For from Scream 4. At the time that came out, that was my favorite song used in that entire franchise. Then Scream 5 came out, and I loved I Don't Want to Talk by Wallows, which is how I discovered the band and fell in love with their album that came out last year, Tell Me That It's Over. And I really love the song Fell Out of Love by Salem and Carly Hansen. But Stay Alive just fits so perfectly with this film. And I think Demi Lovato, getting Demi Lovato to do the song was an excellent choice, especially because Demi is back in the pop rock genre where I think Demi really thrived in that genre of music and is thriving. I actually listened to it a couple times on the drive home, even though I listened to it the day it came out. It's not the same to hear it the day it comes out than watching the film, hearing the song, and it's like, wow, this is such a great song. Let me hear it again and again. Another great thing that Scream 6 has is there are Easter eggs. Some are very small and you might miss them. But real fans, I think we're going to catch them. I caught quite a bit of them. And even then, I feel like I missed a lot of them. So on a rewatch, maybe I'll catch them for sure. I'll catch the rest of them. But along with Radio Silence wanting to deliver a film with really great Easter eggs, some really great commentary, and very great meta, Radio Silence wanted to deliver an opening scene that is perhaps, in my opinion, one of the best in the franchise since the first film. That is high praise, I know, but it does something that you just wouldn't expect from your standard Scream opening. And the way it goes about it, again, fresh, and it's intense to the point where I was losing my mind in the screening, going, hold on, well, that's not how you do, that is not how you do a Scream opening scene. What is going on? And the way they continue about it until you get to the title card, I think that is possibly the best surprise that I got with Scream 6. And I actually think this is possibly the best way to segue towards the end of this review. This film works because it's not afraid to take risks and reimagine how a Scream film should look. It's why we go to the movies to watch horror films, to be surprised, to be on the edge of our seats as we watch our favorite characters and we worry for them. It showcases why fans love this franchise and why the directors want to deliver the best possible project for the fans. It combines the best of the past and the present. And I really, really enjoyed this film. I love it. I cannot wait to rewatch it. My recommendation for this film: see this in a theater, see this in a good, comfortable theater. Get there early, make it an experience, make it a must see trip with your friends who either love horror films or love this franchise, because it has something for everyone to enjoy, whether it's the comedy, whether it's that friend who really loves gore. There is something you can appreciate within this film. And that is perhaps one of the best things you can walk away with Scream 6. And it just allows you to enjoy yourself at the movies. My rating for this film, you're probably expecting me to say 10 out of 10. And I can understand where you're coming from with that. But because I had some minor issues with the film that just wouldn't go away, even if I have a minor issue, if it goes away when I'm reviewing it or when I'm thinking about it, I'll probably stick to the higher rating. If it still sticks with me, it's because I'm a little bit more critical about it. So I kind of have to take those little points off. But even maybe on a rewatch, I'll probably love it more, overlook those more, anything is possible. But for now, it is a 9.5 out of 10. It's going to show up as a 5 on Letterboxd, but it's fine. I'm allowed to do that. I'm a fan. But I genuinely think that this is the best film so far of 2023.
You are absolutely right.
Have I seen everything that's come out in this year? No. But this film reminded me not only of my love for the franchise, but reminded me that even when you think you know what's going to happen in a horror film, a film like Scream 6 reminds you you don't know everything. And that makes it so much more exciting of an experience.
She's got a point. She's an icon. She's a legend. And she is the moment. Now, come on now.
Right now, best film of 2023, hands down. We'll see how it looks from here to December 2023, but hey, if Scream last year could run the gauntlet and Bodies, Bodies, Bodies came close to taking that top spot, we'll see how Scream 6 can handle it.
Well, yes.
I just love it. I loved it. I am the person who enjoyed that screening the most. I don't even have to ask the people that were there. It's kind of just obvious that I'm the one who enjoyed it the most. That is my review of Scream 6. Thank you so much for watching. In the comments, if you want, let me know what is your favorite Scream film. Or in the comments, you know what? You could leave what is your ranking order of the Scream films. Do you have the first one up there? Do you have the fifth one higher than people think it should be? Let me know in the comments down below. Now, I want to thank you so much for watching. If you like this video, you can hit the like button and subscribe. I'd greatly appreciate it. And you can follow me on Twitter, on Letterboxd, and on Serialized at Leading Mohicans. And remember, regardless of what others feel about the things you love, it is always for the agenda. Bye.